All right, welcome back. We are MDEV1004. That's Mobile APIs and Frameworks in the summer 2023 semester at Georgian, and it's week 2, part 3 of our broadcast and recording. And in this part, let's talk about Express a little bit more in detail. We talked last day about Express, and there's some things we need to discuss today because maybe you know Express, but maybe you don't know Express, right? And so that's what we're talking about in this part. So we said that back, again, in the same time frame, 2008 time frame, TJ, and this beautiful name, Holowaychuk, right, is, he was a crazy developer that came up with Express. And what he did was he wrapped it around something called Connect. Connect was a module that helped us do Node.js easier, right, way back then. And so what Express does, it extends Connect and adds more functionality. It added things like a routing system and a bunch of other stuff, right? And we needed this. Once we had Express, it kind of created this revolution of two things: an API that we can use on the back end with no front end, right? And one thing that's great is we can replace Express's view engine with nothing, and we can, kind of produce, kind of just JSON data, which is what we want to do, all right? The JSON data can be consumed by any front end. So it can be consumed by React. It can be consumed by Angular. It can be consumed by some kind of mobile app, right? That's what we want to do in this course, right? Is we want to use Express as an API. So what we get is we have a single server file. That's what we have. We're going to get in a second. Server TS. And we know that the EJS templating engine, what it does is it creates, the view for Express. Instead of me talking about it the entire time, I'm going to switch hit now. Okay, this is the time we're going to do the in-class exercise 2, which is going to be due this weekend. Now I know this weekend just passed was Mother's Day. I'm sorry about that. I know that some people had things to do. That's why I said please target Saturday, right, as much as you can. And this weekend coming up is also a bad weekend because it's a long weekend. So I know for me, there's all kinds of stuff happening on May 2-4, right, which is what's happening right now. So I apologize in advance. Get it done now. Get it done today. Get it done tomorrow. Don't wait till Saturday and Sunday to get it done. But it's due Sunday, but just give you guys some time to finish it, all right? So first, let's get back to what we started. Let's start with what we had last week. So I'm going to go back to our downloads. And downloads, we had this M2023 ISIS. Let's make a brand new folder this time, and we'll do this whole thing again. And in fact, why don't we use the command line to create an Express server, right, like we did last time with our Express generator, okay? But in this case, I don't want any view engine. So no view engine at all right? Now, let's see what the difference is. We'll try and do this maybe more than once. So the way to do this is if I pull up a command prompt, right, or a terminal on Mac, right, and if I do something like cd space, same commands on Mac, by the way, and I drag and drop my folder, I drag and drop my folder from my file system, as an example, this one, then what I want to do, this is the surrounding folder, the kind of the bigger folder, right? Then what I want to do here is I want to make a brand new folder. And I could do it manually, right? But I'm going to let Express Generator do my work, right? I'm going to say Express. And if you look at Express, remember we loaded Express Generator last week, right? So you should have this working last time. What we did last week, we did an npm install Express Generator -G for global. We did that last week. And so this week we're going to use Express for the same thing. And if I go Express by itself, it's going to say, warning, the default view engine will not be blah, 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 destination on empty, want to continue. So I want to say Control C. No, we don't want that. Let's try this again. Express, and then -- help. And you can see that Express gives you these options, right? So it says we can do things with -E for the view engine, right? We can do things with -H, -V for the view engine, right? And there's also -, no view. What if we tried to do it that way? By the way, notice also it says we can also do minus minus git, which actually adds a git ignore file. And minus minus force, which forces a non-empty directory. Right, that's what it does. So lots of stuff. So we're going to do this thing. We're going to say express. Let's try this out. Let's see what happens with this thing. Remember with express. Express is a command line command. Now we need a verb, what we want to do, right? So here is, we're saying minus minus no view, minus minus git. And then we want to have the command line, the actual folder for where it's going. So look at the structure. Express, some options, and then directory. The directory is going to be called MDEV1004 in the M2023 ICE2, right? And then press enter. And it's going to basically make the directory for us. So this is the line here. Look at the line up here, right? This is the line up here. Express, minus minus no dash view dash dash git. And it says change directory to this, npm install, and then run the app, okay? Let's take a look and see what we got. We got the structure that we wanted before, right? We also got a git ignore file and a package.json file out of the box, right? That's what we got. And let's run this in Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to bring up Visual Studio Code, right? And let's just drag and drop this into Visual Studio Code to see what we get. We get this. Here's our bin, and here's everything else. I'm going to get a bunch of these things, and I'm going to say show deprecated extensions. Sometimes we get these deprecated extensions, by the way, guys. You know, so here's VS Code Pandoc, right? This is an extension that I used to use. You can see that I can, you know, anything like this, like TypeScript Hero. If it's deprecated, and by the way, every week there's some new deprecated thing, right? If it says migrate or whatever, it's okay to do it. And then what I like to do is always restart VS Code. That's what I kind of want to do. So it's also downloading a new update from last week too. I don't know if you saw that, right? So that's okay. I'm just going to restart. And hopefully it won't give me that weird issue again. There we are. All right, and something else, a Git repository is found in the parent folders of the workspace or the open files. Would you like to open the repository? I'm going to say never, okay? You have a Windows subsystem for Linux. You know, do you want to install it? I'm going to say ignore that. Don't worry about that. And here it's still trying to download updates. I'm okay with that. So what did I get? I got an app.js, which looks like this. Okay, this is what my app.js looks like. Notice that there is no view engine. We're going to define it ourselves, our view engine. That's what we're going to do, okay? And so that's something that we can do, right? We definitely want routes. So here's our routes. That's something we have. So take a look at routes. And if you look at index.js, we have a route for index.js. One of the exercises I want to do with you is convert everything right now to TypeScript, okay? That's the first thing we're going to do. But first, we want to run it. And the first change I want to make to our folder structure before we do anything else, right? Hopefully you guys are with me. Are you guys with me? Okay, good. How about the people online? Are you good? Daryl, Jasleen? How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good. This www file is useless here. Don't leave that www file. What I want to do is take this www file and pull it out here, like so. So just take this and then drag and drop it over here. And what I want to do is I want to rename this thing with F2. I want to rename this thing to server.js for now. Just server.js, okay? Notice what it's going to do. It's going to go into /app, and it's going to do a require. These are all old school things that we're going to replace in a second, okay? We don't need the bin folder anymore, so let's delete it. Delete, okay? There's delete. And Visual Studio Code's ready to update. I'm going to restart to update. Get it done. I don't need this little terminal window anymore, right? Because we can have everything working within Visual Studio Code, right, in a second. And now you can see that it's updated, okay? Let's save this file. So now, the next thing we want to do, I'm just going to don't show again for this one? Do you want to ignore all extension recommendations, right? We'll say no, but I'm going to just ignore that one. All right, so let's take a look here. We have our server.js, and we have our app.js, and our package.json. It basically says, this is the name of our project, MDEV1004, M2023 ICE2, right? We need to add additional things here. And look at this dependencies. Dependencies basically says, these are project dependencies. We need some dev dependencies as well. We're going to do this in a second, okay? So we got some stuff happening here, which is pretty good, right? But one thing is this start method is incorrect. It did an update. It needs to point to server.js. So please change your start in the package.json. Please change it to show just server.js. Okay, that's the one thing I want to change. Okay, server.js. Save. And now I want to run nodemon. Okay? We know nodemon is a module we added last week. If I press nodemon, and if everything goes well, it should run, but it says that there's a problem. Let's take a look and see what that problem is. And this is from the first thing we did. It says, okay, starting node server.js, it did it. It says internal problem, it says cannot find express. What did we do wrong? What did we forget to do? We didn't load the modules. We don't have node modules. So let's try this again. If I'm going to say npm, now instead of npm install, before we do npm install, I want to use yarn as much as possible. It's actually better, right? So what I want to do is, if I do a yarn, let's do this. Let's do a yarn init. Please do this with me, a yarn init. Okay? What yarn init will do is it will redo our package.json. Okay, here's what we're going to do here. Notice that it's asking you for the name of your package. What it's modifying here, guys, is this package.json. Let's close it down so there's no clashes, right? And let's continue. So I'm going to press enter here. I'm not changing that. Question, what's the version number? Let's put 0.0.1. First version that we did, right? Actually, realistically, it's 0.0.2 because, we're ICE2, right? Next, question, description. So we can say something like, this is a demo project for MDEV1004 in the summer 2023 semester at Georgian. And we can also add things. We can backtrack there. We can say MDEV1004. We can say in class exercise 2 in the summer, blah, 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 blah. Enter. Question, entry point.
Sorry to interrupt. The user filter MDEV1004.
We're going to fix that, aren't we? Let's leave it alone for now. Yeah, thank you for that, though. I'm glad you noticed. Server.js. We're going to say that's the entry point. Server.js. Enter. Repository URL. We don't have one yet. We're going to come back to this one. Enter. Right? Author. Put your name. I'm going to put mine. Enter. MIT license. That's the license number. Enter. Is it private? Sure. And it saves the difference. So now we're going to go back to what Jasleen asked, which is, here's my package.json. And if I close this up, you can see that I have the wrong thing. It says M2023, right? And it says ICE2. And here it's M2004, and it should be 1004. We can change it right here directly inside of this. Also, notice that our dependencies are here, and our description, main, author, and license are down here. Guess what? I want to redo this a little bit. So the name of the project is good, the version is good, but I want to grab the description, the author, and the license. So let's grab our description. Let's reorganize things a little bit. So grab our description, cut it out of there, and put it in below version. Okay, that's where I'm putting it. I'm also going to take my author and license, right? Actually, license can stay where it is, but author, I want to move that. And I want to move that below my description. So it should be like name, version, description, author. Is it private or not? Private or not should be like the last thing. So we can kind of cut that out, put it down here. Let's make sure there's a comma at the end of MIT, right? And then notice that I have main, which is my server.js. I have this as a start, and it's good to go. So that is me rejigging my package.json for the first time. We're going to do it again in a second. Okay? This is the first part.
Professor,
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Why yarn and why not NPM? I understand NPM had some issues that in terms of security, and yarn is much faster.
That's the only reason.
than
Yarn is,
NPM.
you answer the question. Yarn is faster, and that's the only reason why I use it, not because of anything else. I like NPM, but NPM has issues. And I want to use, you can only use one package manager with your files up online. Okay, so it's either Yarn or NPM, and I'm choosing Yarn for everything. So that's why I'm starting with Yarn now. Okay, that's the reason.
But what I've read recently in some articles is that NPM 5 is similar to yarn in these days now. Like I'm not sure about it, but is it true, or is it yarn is still in the
Yarn is still good. Yarn is still good. Okay, so next part. What I want to do is I want to say, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but yeah, Yarn is okay still. It's fine. So, but you could use NPM. Some people like to use NPM anyway. I don't. I use Yarn generally, and you should only use one package manager on your remote server. So I'm just going to save this one. And I want to do a Yarn install. Yarn install. This is where it does a Yarn lock, right? And it creates a Yarn lock file, right? And this Yarn lock file, either you can have a package.lock file or a yarn.lock file. You can't have both. That's why I'm choosing to do Yarn right now, okay? So that's what it did. It gave me a Yarn lock file, and it installed all the modules. Let's run that node modules again. So clear, node mon, if I press enter, now we're good. It works, right? It's so far we have no errors. Let's try it on a server. So we're gonna, sorry, on a browser. So we're gonna go localhost 3000, and it gives us this. Wait a minute, what? How can it give me this? We have no view engine. Where is this coming from? Well, let's take a look and see what it's doing, right? It's going and looking at, right, if I look here at my app.js, let's take a look here. It says I have an index, which is a router, and my user's router, right? I also have my logger express, and I have an express static site. Look at this, express static, right? And basically it says that it includes in the join, it joins the directory name that I'm in to the regular path. That's what it does. And it joins it with public. So public, the folder public is included. Inside the public folder, we're being given an index.html, and this is what is loading. That's why it says welcome to Express. There is no, you can run it this way too. There is no view engine, it's just doing this, okay? If I did not have a view engine, if I didn't have my index.html, and if I didn't have this whole public folder, which by the way I don't need, because I'm not going to have a public folder, because I'm not going to do any view front end, then we wouldn't need this. What does my index.js do? Well, it says res render index, that's what it says, res render index, title express. Okay, that's what it does. So it's looking at the view itself, and it's rendering whatever we're going to render. We're not going to do this in a second. Okay, we're going to take this away. But for now, it's okay. Let's put this as a job up on GitHub. By the way, what did my gitignore give me? My gitignore, if I look at my gitignore package here, gitignore says, okay, logs are ignored, npm debug, yarn error, all PIDs, as well as grunt, all this stuff, npm, yarn integrity, env.next, all that stuff. These are all ignored, including node modules. Node modules are ignored. Let's see if it actually does ignore node modules here. Remember, I have two gitignore files, right? I have a git repository that's upper level, and I have this repository here, which is a folder inside my bigger repository. Remember, I should be able to push, right? So let's make a brand new terminal. And what if I did something like swim up one level to this, I'm just navigating to the ICEs, and then do a git add and all that stuff. Let's see what happens. Git add dot, right? Git add dot. Git commit minus M, and we'll say added project files for ICE2, git push. Those are the three commands, right? Let's go over them again. All right, so you see them. Ready? I went up one level, cd dot dot. I went to git add dot, which means add all my files to my project, and it added only these files, right? And then I did git commit minus M, and I said added project files for ICE2. The git commit is the snapshot that I'm taking above my project, right? Minus M means message, and this is the friendly name for my, my commit. And then after I've done my commit, I'm going to push. And the reason why I can push is because you and I have already defined my remote last week. Remember? When we made our folder. Does that make sense? Robert, you're looking at it like with...
Yeah, no, my eyes are with that.
Yeah.
On the end of it goes git command, and that's with dash M? Or
Yes.
N?
M for message. Dash M for message.
Professor,
Yep.
sorry to interrupt. Quick question.
Yep.
So if I'm running nodemon, it's saying it's still saying it's not my module dot app.
Well, because you have to change your server.js, right? So server.js, we pulled it out of bin, remember? And then if your server.js doesn't point to app, if it points to bin/app, it won't work. That's what I need. That's the difference. Okay? Hopefully that's your problem. But let me, is that the problem?
Yeah, I missed that part. Sorry.
Okay, good, no problem. So now let's take a look up online what we got. I'm going to go into GitHub and go to Georgian, and let's take a look at our latest push, which is this one. And now take a look. You can see that I've got an extra in-class exercise. And inside there, I don't have any node modules like we had last time, just this. Guys, this is good, right? I don't want all my node modules in here. It's going to be a pile of node modules at the end, right? So for your in-class exercise and for your application, your app that you're going to build for me, for assignment 1, please do not include, make a git ignore file that ignores that stuff. You don't need it. It's already up here, okay? So this is our first build. Yay, this is the first part of in-class exercise 2. Part 2. Let's continue, all right? So this is nice. It's nice, but I don't want it to be using JavaScript. I want to use TypeScript. Uh-oh. Let's get back out to that TypeScriptlang.org. It finally came back up, by the way, right? I went to Playground here, right, in Playgrounds, and notice that I have this funky thing here, okay? Let me just show you something. So let's just do a class. Let's try this together. In Playground, type in class person, and then we'll say, we'll have a constructor function, right? And the constructor is going to have two parts to it. We'll have the name and the age for the person, right? So we'll say, so name, right? Well, which is a colon, a string, and age, which is a number. Okay, so those are the two things we want. Okay, and we're going to say that because we're making a person class in TypeScript, we need a couple of private variables. So we'll have some, we'll say these are private instance members, just to show you how this looks. So if I say private, and if I call it m underscore name, where m is member variable, underscore means private, that's my encoding, and I say that this is a string, and private m underscore age, where this is a number, right? Then it's going to say there's some issues because our compiler options is going to say there's no initializer. This is the issue that you're going to get if you try to write something like this. So then what it's looking for is something like this dot m underscore age is equal to age. We want to do it in the same order because that's the right thing to do. This dot m underscore name is equal to name. And notice that the errors go away, right? And what it does, if notice on the right here, what it's done for us is it's emitted proper JavaScript. That's what this is on the right-hand side. And How did it get to this? We have this tsconfig.json file that's basically online. Okay, this is for your sandbox. I don't need you to do this for the in-class exercise. I'm showing you something just to be aware of this, right? So here, if I go to tsconfig here and just pull this down, right, you're going to see that my target is ECMAScript 2017. Let's make my target ECMAScript 5. Okay, for a second. Let's just do that. And let's just, instead of JSX React, let's say none. We're not going to use React. Okay, we're just going to do the TypeScript for not React. Our module type is CommonJS. We'll use CommonJS as a module. And then take a look at all these. These are all your options. These are all the things that you find in your tsconfig.json file right here. So again, in the tsconfig area, TypeScript. In the target, ES5. JSX, none. Module, CommonJS. And down in here, you can see that enable color formatting in TypeScript's output to make compiler errors easier to read. Click. That's pretty. That's what it means, right? Okay, emit. It says generate .ts files from TypeScript and JavaScript files in your project. No. Okay. Inline source maps. Include source map files included in the emit JavaScript. No. Remove comments. Click. Right? If I click this one, by the way, if I say click this one, it'll give me here's source map file. Look at that one, how it updates it already. Look, right? And this is the old way, like I talked about today. This is JavaScript member review today. This is the old way that classes look. Take a look at that old class way. A function inside of a function, guys. That's what we were talking about before, okay? Import helpers, down level iteration, no. Inline sources, no. Strip internal, no emit helpers, preserve const enums, preserve value imports. These are all other switches we're not going to use right now. Interop. Okay, this is interesting. All right. ES module interop. Okay, it's checked on, right? And strict. Enable all strict type checking options. No implicit any. Strict null checks. Strict function types. Strict bind call apply. Strict property. Like there's a bunch, man. I'm not going to keep naming them all, okay? But these are all that they've turned on for us automatically. These are recommended, right? And if you scroll down, you can see that there are a number of additional things in here, all right, that they've put on. This is your TypeScript, kind of information. We're going to include some additional ones, okay, that work with Node, okay? And you can see that all of these are the types. So what do I get here? If I go and click away, right, thank you very much, TypeScript, then the class here becomes the class that looks like here, right? So remember what I said, if I had a function, let's say, for example, I had a function called, speaks. Person can speak, right? So if I have a function called speaks, let's call it like this, speaks, and the speaks function, kind of has no output, but it returns a string type, right? Notice what it did here on the right, right? It says person.prototype.speaks, where speaks is the name of the function, and then you have an anonymous function here that does whatever you want it to do. We can do a console log, or we can return, right, our name. We'll say this._name, right? And we can use the old school of doing it. The old school way is doing it this, plus, kind of something like says hello. What is the new school way of doing it? With string interpolation. How do I do string interpolation with the new ECMAScript version? Do you guys remember? Backtick.
Yes.
Right, the backtick character. Let's rewrite this in the new way, right? So the new way would look, we want to use the backtick character, right? Backtick, and we want to say $ curly brace. Don't we want to do that? $ curly brace, this.m_name, right? Says hello. Okay, that is the new way using template strings. That's what they're called. Okay, template strings. Now, even though we wrote it in the new way, look what TypeScript did. TypeScript emitted whatever we want. It actually did a concat. It took a string and concatenated those two things together because that is syntactically correct. That's the right way of doing it. And TypeScript found a better way of doing it than plussing, basically using the plus operator. We don't want to use the plus operator because that is incorrect. This is the right way of doing it, but this is using ECMAScript 5. What about ECMAScript 2016, whatever? It almost looks exactly identical. Let's take a look. Let's change the target from ES5 to ECMAScript 2022. And if I close, you can see that it looks almost identical. The only difference is this part. This part is missing because, and so is this part. And so is this part. And so is this part. Why? TypeScript and JavaScript at this level almost looks the same, but JavaScript doesn't have any types. That's what I was going to show you earlier. I want to show you this today. Okay? But what it also gave us is some hints on what we need to convert Node. Okay? That's what we want to convert Node. And in a previous version, I'm going to give it to you instead of me fooling around. I'm just going to grab this link here, and I'm going to copy it onto our Teams for you guys. So here's the link. Here's the actual code for you guys on Teams, right? And I'm going to use this. You can actually find this in Georgian College. In a previous course I did, actually, I'd use the exact same configuration detail. Take a look. ES 2022. I'm just going to use this exact thing instead of us guessing. I want to use this exact tsconfig.json file to do it. Okay, so and I'm going to create this tsconfig.json file together with you. All right, so let's do it. So back to Visual Studio Code. I need a tsconfig.json file. So I'm just going to crunch this in, and let's add it in. I'm going to kind of add one in. Let's make sure it's in the right spot so it's not in a random space. It should be down in here, in this area. So tsconfig.json, there it is. And tsconfig.json is going to have, again, we want compiler options. That's the first part. And the compiler options is going to have a target. So we want to have the target, and we want the target to be ES 2022, please. That's the one we want. We want the module pattern to be common.js. That's what we want to do. Common.js. Okay. We want a couple of additional things here that are required. And I'm going to refer back to this one to explain what these are. Source maps we know is what we want. So we're going to say source maps is true, because that's going to give us source maps for our TypeScript. Remove comments. We saw that was a good thing. Remove comments. So that would be, if I can actually do this, remove comments. That's true. And then the next one is, do we want it always strict? And the answer is yes. So strict, this one. Oh, man, today is one of those days where it's not doing what I'm telling it to do. True, right? No implicit any. This one, true. Definitely want that. So we're not going to have weird implicit any's. The next one is strict null checks. These are all from the TypeScriptlang.org, by the way. Strict null checks. This one, we're going to say true. So we don't want anything to be null. And the next one is strict function types. We want that to be true, right? And we're going to also say strict bind call apply. This is good because with this bind call apply, you can look all these up, by the way. What strict bind call apply does is it basically makes you so that you can't just randomly bind stuff together. Actually, if you don't do this, JavaScript will bind functions together with other functions without the bind or call kind of methods. We don't want that to happen. So it's protecting us a little bit. And strict property initialization. That's what made me do that thing where it says, hey, there is no name or age. You need to make it, and you have to initialize it. So strict property initialization, right? True. That's what that does. No implicit this. We definitely want that. No implicit this. And implicit this basically says we want to specify that it's this. We want to use the this keyword. Otherwise, it'll try and do implicit this. It'll kind of add this to the front of your stuff, and it could cause errors. That's why we say no implicit this. Okay? And then always strict. Always strict. Definitely want that. Followed by no implicit returns. So So no implicit returns, right, is basically what it's going to do is going to say, if you need a return statement, if you say it returns string, return a string. I'm not going to accept it not returning a string, even if you told me, if your function tells me that it should return a string, you return a string. Okay? So that's what this does.
What's the difference between strict and always strict?
Strict means that it's strict within the module. Always strict means it's strict everywhere, right? So outside of in the global namespace. Okay? Okay, this is the important stuff. ES module interrupt. ES module interrupt, we must have this in, or we can't do ES modules, right? So ES module interrupt. Now we have some example, emit decorator metadata. That is one thing we need. Emit decorator metadata, that one. And we also have experimental decorators. That one comes on. Experimental decorators. Seems like a long list, but we pay for this once, guys. And then finally, module resolution, this one, is node. And if you kind of look at this, node is something that we want to use. Node by itself. Not node 16, just node. Okay? Those are all of them. And then finally, there's another piece to it, which is an exclude module. So we can say exclude, and we want to exclude node modules. So the reason why we use node modules to exclude is because we don't want node modules to be included in our TypeScript because someone else wrote those. So imagine if we're trying to transpile and we're transpiling somebody else's code. We don't want that. We want to exclude node modules from being transpiled. Okay? Save, please. And this we're going to put up on GitHub because we just added our tsconfig.json file for the first time, and I want you to be able to go there and see when I did that. Okay? So again, back to this, and I'm going to say something like git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added tsconfig.json file. Git push. Okay, so that's the one we just added. Okay. And it's giving us a bit of an error. If I go back to this is our project. If I refresh now, you can see that we had this one file, tsconfig.json, and there's the commit for it, right? And if you look at, if I go back to the project, like the upper level project, you can see that that's the last commit that was done, tsconfig.json file, right? So that's what we're looking at here. You can actually see when it was done. That's why I'm saying you can't spoof this thing. You can't say, well, you know, I'm not going to use it or whatever, or I'm going to add it after the fact. Tom doesn't know that when it was added. No, I know everything. It tells me right here, 18 minutes ago, and it's going to keep counting. All right, so this is good. So that we've got this part done. I like it. I like it, and I'm just going to close off the terminal for a second, but it does not doing anything. Let's convert these now to TypeScript. Okay, so first we'll start off, this is the last part, this is going to take the remainder of our time. Let's convert our JavaScript file, our server.js, let's rename it to a server.ts. Let's do that. So again, server.ts. Okay, and we're okay, but now we're starting to get errors. Take a look. Error, right? And we're getting errors because we're requiring something, and we don't use requires, we use imports. Let's leave it like this for a second, and let's use import instead. How does the import look? So instead of var, first of all, let's get rid of all the vars. So Control A, Control F. So that would be Command A, Command F on the Mac. We would look at all var space, and we want to convert all our var space right now. Let's minimum, we should make them lets, minimum. Refresh and kind of redo this. Let me undo that. Let me undo that. Let space is what we need there. Kind of do that. So all of them are lets now. They should be either let or const. Next. Let's go here and say let app equal to. Now this is something that we want to say what it is. If I say let app equal to import, if I do import, from import star from app, right? Let's just do that. right? Import star from app. What? Can we do this? How? What's the structure for this thing? How do we import and do an app? Can we say let app equal to import from app? Well, let's keep going. Let's see how about debug? So debug is a module, right? And so is HTTP. Can I say let HTTP import? How does that work? So let's do, this is a built-in module. So if I say something like let, HTTP is equal to import, HTTP, right? I want to do an import HTTP. That's what I want to be able to do, right? And I want to do import star from HTTP, right? But the problem we're having is TypeScript doesn't understand what we want. And the way to add support for TypeScript is to add, and for Node, is to add what we want to call documentation modules or type files. This is how you do this, okay? Let's leave this the way it is. We know there's errors. Don't worry about it. Let's fix it. And we're going to do that on the command line. Now I'm going to swim back to our file. So MDEV1004, M2023, ICE2. Okay, I'm going to go back into that folder. And I'm going to say something like yarn add, here we go, ready? At types slash, and then you're going to put in, I'm just going to make it so that you have more room here. Let's add the types. I want to put in, node, right? Let's add node. And then we're going to say minus dev. Minus dev. Dev is a developer dependency. Let's see what yarn does for us. If I did that, if I press enter, it's going to run and it's going to get all the node modules, but it's doing it for node 20.1.4, right? What version of node are we running? Node minus version, right? 20.1.0. Huh? Last week, we updated to 20.1.0. How is node 20.1.4? It's okay. It's okay. All right? Later is better than earlier. Put it that way. Our package.json file now has another section called dev dependencies. Take a look at this dev dependencies thing. I want to grab all of this part, this remember I told you I was going to change this, and I'm going to put this down below private and all that stuff so the dependencies and dev dependencies are together, okay? There we go. That's our new structure for our package.json, okay? So there's dev dependencies and it's node. I want to include other things we added in. We added in express and Morgan and debug and cookie parser. Let's add those in too, okay? But now we're going to notice a problem, right? A big problem. I want to do the same thing. And I want to say, and let's bring this down so you can see it all, right? So you can see the problem, right? Cookie parser is 1.44. Okay, let's go a yarn add at types, and I want to do cookie dash parser, right? Minus dev. What version did I pull down? What version did I pull down? Well, my friends, it says that I pulled down with cookie dash parser, right? I pulled down version 1.43. Okay, that's pretty cool. I'm happy with that. Woohoo, that's nice. All right. What about Express? Express is 4.16.1, and I've pulled down 4.17.17. But it doesn't show it here. It says just cookie parser. Huh, that's interesting. Let's do it again. Let's do the next one. Let's do Express and debug. Okay, let's do debug next. So clear. So again, the same command. It's yarn add at types, and we're going to say debug minus dev. Okay, there's debug. Let's do the next one. Yarn add at types slash express minus dev. Yarn add at types slash Morgan minus dev. There we go. And by the way, if you're going to ask what's Morgan, Morgan is a logger, right? And debug is the ability for us to output debug information to the console. That's what it does. Those are the modules we have. Now, I want you to notice something. Our debug is 4.17. 4.17, guys. All right? And our Express is 4.17.17. That's not bad. We got an older one, but we can update it, right? And Morgan is 1.94. This is 1.91. And Node is 20.14. Guys, we need to update these things, right? And the way to do that is if we type upgrade. Let's see if we can do that. So if I say something like, let's try it out. If I say something like yarn upgrade, right? If I did that, what does that do? It kind of looks at our packages and it sees if there's anything it can update, right? And notice that our modules didn't change. And I want to show you this for a second, because if you look at our package.json, 4.17.17, oh wait, but this is 4.16.1, it didn't do anything to these ones. What about if I want to update, right? Is there something I can do? Like yarn has a bunch of functions. Can I do like yarn update? What does that do? And it says there's no update command. Nope. So what if I remove cookie parser and I add it back in? Well, cookie parser has an older version for my type definition. I think we're good with cookie parser, right? Let's try it anyway. We'll say yarn remove cookie parser. So cookie parser. Now this one we're not going to put minus dev because, and by the way, is yarn remove a thing or is it yarn RM? What is it? So yarn remove worked. It removed cookie parser. Let's put it back in. Yarn add cookie parser. Now it's back to 1.46. That's the latest version. Let's do the same thing for all of them. So we'll say yarn, and by the way, you can do it all at once if you want to try this out. Yarn remove, oops, undo. Yarn remove, and you can remove all of them. Debug, Express, Morgan. If I do that, it removes them all, right? And I can add them back in. Yarn add, debug, Express, and Morgan. And if I did that, now you're going to see, my friends, that they're different versions. Take a look at that. That's what we want. We want to give it so that it's the latest version. I'd rather be behind with my type definition library, but ahead with my versions. If I want to match the versions up, we can do that too. We can tell Yarn to give me the exact version I want, right? If I want to. But this is okay. Okay? Save. Back to my poor server.ts. And we are seeing some issues, like we said. Now we know that import star from HTTP, right, is okay. If I was actually doing this, if I said import star from HTTP, well, it's kind of doing something like, well, I don't know really what you want, Tom, right? Because you're trying to import something from something. What if I said something like import HTTP, right? And if I just did something like this, is that enough? No. Import, HTTP from HTTP. How about that? That worked, right? And it actually gave me, right? It actually gave me functionality for HTTP. It's probably somewhere down in here, right? What if we did the same thing for our debug? Import debug from debug. Let's try that. So we'll change this one to import debug from debug. But we don't want to do this. We want to call debug here like this. That's what we want to do. That is the line. That's how it works. We kind of separate those two out. How about this? Well, import is what we say. Import app, that's the name of the file, from this. But now it doesn't work. Why not? Because we're not exporting anything. We need to export from our file. I know we're going to run a little bit overtime. Are you guys okay with me if I run overtime just a little bit? Okay, I'm going to run a little bit overtime today. Sorry. So let's get into, and by the way, for people online, if you have to run, I totally understand. I'm going to keep recording. All right, let's run into our app.ts and let's rename this one. So if I put F2 and if I change this to app.ts here, here's my app.ts, I'm going to do the same trick I did before. I want to rename all the vars to lets. So I'm going to Control A, Control F, and I'm going to pull this down and say change all my vars to lets, replace. Okay, that's the first thing I want to do. And I want to say the same thing. I want to say import express from express. Import express, and then we want to get rid of that require from express. Please do this one line at a time. I know there's quicker ways of doing this. Don't do it. Import path from path. Okay. Import cookie parser from cookie parser. So what this is doing is it's naming the module cookie parser instead of me having a let statement. I don't need to do that anymore. Import logger. Now this is where, import logger, right, from Morgan. Is that going to work? Can I do that? And the answer is it does work. But now we're going to do the same thing here. So let index router is equal to require. That works, right? But we need to change our routes. Instead of a JS, we want to change it to a TS. So let's change our index to a TS file. And we want to get rid of our users. So no more users. Goodbye users. Goodbye users. Delete. We don't have any users. So here's our index.ts, but now we want to do this for the first time. So now we're back down to the lowest level. All right, so now we're going to say import express from express. I just jumped to the index file for a second. Import from express, no problem. Import, this is router, this is a let. Let router or a const, actually. Let router is equal to express.router. That works. Take a look at the code hinting we're getting. Pretty good, right? Router.get. If I go to get, look at all the code hinting we're getting. Huge. Way better than before, right? And module.exports, we don't want to do this. We want to say, we want to export default. That's what we want to do. So what is the export default router is what I want to say. So export default router. That is what we want. That is us converting things from TypeScript to JavaScript. We want to kind of make it with this structure. Okay? Take a look at app.ts now. App.ts doesn't have anything to complain about because we're requiring, but it should actually be something like this. It should be import index router from routes.index. That's what it should be. And user router, if you think about this, user router should not be there because we don't need the user router. We can get rid of it. And down in here, we can get rid of this. There's no more user router. Okay, we don't need that anymore. We're almost there, guys. We're almost there, right? And instead of module exports, we're going to say export default app. Export default app. Okay? And what this does is it's converted everything to modern TypeScript, right, with Node.js. Okay, so what's Server's problem now? Server has a problem, right? Server says there's something wrong still. Let's go there and check it out. Take a look at it. Well, Server says, I'm good with app now. I'm good with debug. I'm good with HTTP. But as we scroll down, we can see that our normalized port says we're trying to get a val, and val has an implicit any. Because of our no implicit any, we have to define what val is, and then also normalized port returns also any. What do we want normalized port to return? Because normalized port is something that we want to also use. And there's also another error here with error. Error, it doesn't understand what error means. It's also of type error. Let's make error be of type HTTP error. That's what I want. And actually, if you do express dot error, that's what I want. I want an express error some kind to put in there. Let's try this out. Express itself, right, is something that we want to have access to. So we can say that it's an express, capital E for express, dot, and then there is an error of some kind, right? So this is what it is, but it's really an HTTP error. HTTP error. So maybe we can say HTTP dot, could there be some kind of error, right? And that's what the problem is. We don't know what this is. Now we could mark it as any. That we could do it. And if we did that, you know what we're saying to TypeScript? Screw you, TypeScript. We don't want to use you. All right, so we're going to figure this out. Remember I said we're going to figure out this problem? First, we mark it as any, because me, you know what I do? I make it work and then refactor. That's my model, right? And same thing goes down here. This is also wrong because the address.port, it says the address is a server.address. And then the address.port is also something that's weird because it says there is no, address is possibly null. Address, it could be, look at the options, right? It could be a string, right? It could be address info, right? Or it could be null. So we can make it, we can actually cast this. This is an interesting way of fixing it. We can say, for the bottom one, on listening, we can say as address info. We can say that. If we made this as address info, if we did this, right, then all of a sudden it fixes our problem. Because we're casting what address is going to be to of type address info. Now, if you're confused about this, don't worry, because what I'm trying to show you here is that everything is fixable. Okay, address info. So what address info is, because server itself is a server object, and address, the address itself gives you this stuff. It gives you the server address, which is either a string or address info, or it could be null. We're going to make an assumption here for the server that we're never going to get null. That's what's happening here. Okay, it's not correct actually. It's a bit error prone, but I'm okay with it. All right, next. We fixed those problems, but not this problem. Val, well, it says normalize the port, right? And by the way, you can always check to see where normalized port is being used. Normalized port is either going to be some kind of port information. By the way, process.env.port, this is a global variable that we're defining, and port comes from the server. So the server itself, your cloud service, defines a global variable called port, right? And we're saying if the port global variable exists, take that one. If it doesn't exist, give me 3000. That's what it gives you, right? But this 3000 is a string, right? And normalized port, it either this or this, we don't know what this is, so we could say that our normalized port should take a string. Let's take a look at that. If we said it takes a string, we can say that that's okay, right? And then basically what it says is if port is not a number, if it's not a number, then return the val, right? If it's not a number. If port is greater than 0, return the port. That's what it does, okay? Either way. And it returns false. So this normalized port returns one of three things: a string, a number, or false. That's what it returns: a string, a number, or false. And you could explicitly do this. You could say it returns a string, pipe, a number, pipe, or false. Those are the three options, right? Which is a funny thing. Do we really want an object to return multiple types? Well, maybe not, but that's what it does. I'm actually being explicit here, and I'm not using implicit returns, right? How about this function, on error? On error returns void. We can say that. We can say void. It returns void, right? We're going to fix the error in a second, though. Okay? Let's go back up to here. Any other errors? No. Now, let's transpile. Let's transpile. Okay? So again, I'm going to use Control-Shift-B, but you can open up a new terminal and just type in TSC space -W, which watches. So I'm going to do Control-Shift-B, which is going to pull up my watch task, right? It's going to try and transpile, starts the compilation process. You can see it's done. And it created JavaScript files. Look at that, JS. Here's my JS, right? And here's my JS. And now that I've got this, if I go and I've actually add another terminal to do nodemon, right? Then it says port 3000 is already in use. Why? Because we have multiple of these things open. Look, take a look here. So if I Control C, if you made a mistake like I just did, take a look at this. It's already doing it. It's restarted the server a bunch of times already for me, right? That means that if I go back up to localhost 3000 and press refresh, we should see the same result. If I put other things in here, if I put something like hello, it'll still do cannot get hello because it doesn't know what hello is, right? We don't have a path for hello, right? Where I want to get you guys to do stuff, your endpoint that I want you to create is something like, I don't know, movies. And it's going to give you all the movies here, right? Right now there is no endpoint called movies, right? We're going to get to that. But what it should do for your in-class exercise is if you just type this, it should give you this, right? Even if we're running with TypeScript. Take a look at some stuff that we did here. It returns some codes here at the bottom. 404 means it doesn't know what hello means. It doesn't know what movies are, but it does know slash. And it knows the route that is slash because if I go to my app.ts, app.ts imports my index router. Index router is found inside of my routes folder under index.ts. And here I'm using something called slash. Slash is the default route. That's what this is, the default route, okay? And my friends, this is the conversion, the first conversion that we've done from JavaScript to TypeScript. This is what you need here, starting off. Any confusion for the people that are online at all, or from the people that are physically in class with me? Do you understand what I did? So we want to use the import and export module pattern. That's what we want to do. I'm going to end with this, import and export module pattern. We import the module name, usually the same name that we use. We can use any name we want, by the way. We don't have to use Express. We can use whatever we want, right? Import Express. The Express is the local name for the Express module. That's what we're saying, right? And then we're going to say, well, let router is equal to Express router. The last thing we didn't fix, let's put this up on GitHub first of all, because we fixed this. By the way, here's something that's weird, right? I want to show you. What if I did a git add dot from here? Is it going to mess up? Before I did a git add dot from the upper level thing, right? What if I did that here? Is it going to do it? It does, of course it does. Git commit -m, we'll say first version of TS node. Git push, TypeScript node, right? That pushes everything like normal. We don't have to swim up, is what I'm saying, right? I want to fix my bug. And the bug that I have is this server.ts part, this HTTP errors thing. Is there a way, look what it did actually, look at this, import address info from net. I didn't do that, it did it automatically for me, right? Because I defined this as an address info down here, it figured out that the type, for me to get that type, I'd have to look at the net built-in module. It did it for me. It wrote that. I didn't write that, right? As soon as I typed address info, it says, oh, you need a module for that. Well, I want to do the same thing for HTTP error. And if we look at node modules, here, there is HTTP, the HTTP error module. Now, do I have to have the HTTP errors in there? Well, HTTP module includes a bunch of stuff, right? So it has requests and whatever. And then if I want to look at the HTTP error node module, so if I say like node module HTTP error, right? So how do I do that? So it says the HTTP errors module, right, is what I want. Well, if we were to look at that, I need to install something called HTTP errors, okay? Let's do that. So we're going to make a brand new external pull this time. And we're going to say yarn add, right, HTTP errors, right, HTTP errors. And then we're going to just say, just like that, yarn add HTTP errors. Enter. Okay, wonderful. We added HTTP errors. Okay, cool. And if you look at the package.json file, now our package.json file includes HTTP errors, but we need some code hinting. That's what these things do. That's our developer dependencies. I'm going to quiz you on this next time, guys, what developer dependencies are, right? They're all the at types, right? And then I'm going to say yarn add at type slash HTTP errors minus dev. And it's going to add me in a module. There's HTTP errors up here. Take a look at that, right? HTTP errors at 2.01. This is at 2.00. That's interesting, right? And then if I go back to my server.ts in here, and if I import HTTP errors from HTTP errors, right? Import HTTP, we'll call it HTTP errors, right? Notice what it says. It says HTTP error. If I did this, it actually does exactly what I want it to do. It actually coded for me. I said import HTTP error, capital HTTP error, that's the only one, from HTTP errors, right? That's the module that I just loaded. It kind of did it for me automatically. The curly braces are the specific, indicate the specific function that I want, as opposed to the entire module. I don't need the entire module, I just need this one part of it. That's what this does, right? And now if I scroll down, right? And if I say, well, this error is of type HTTP error, does it fix my problem? Here's my error. So this is coding. I'm saying, hey, this is an HTTP error now. It's a real thing, right? Does it fix my problem? Well, the great thing about this is, look, error code. I actually get a code number. I get code hinting. Before I got nothing. I was just coding on the fly with any. Any doesn't give me anything. Throw error. Look what it does. It throws HTTP error number. It gives me good code hinting. I'm telling it what I need, which is better than what I had. Does that make sense? Yeah. On listening. On listening returns void. I forgot to do that. Void, right? And let's put this up on GitHub after we try it. First of all, let's see if it still works. Did it error out? So if I go to here, it looks like we're golden because NodeMon restarted our server again, right? No problem. And if I go out to here, to our Express, right? And if I refresh, you're going to see that NodeMon says no changes. I didn't get any, that's what 304 means. Everything is golden. My friends, once we do our push, this is your in-class exercise for today. Let's do it. Git add dot, git commit minus m, and we'll say added HTTP errors module. Git push. Does it make sense? So all I'm trying to do is I want to make everything we do with Node and Express understandable. Here's what I didn't cover in that is for you to read. Inside of this little section here, I wrote about making your first Express application, right? And I also did it the new way. This is the new way of doing it, okay? And I also, if you look through, talk about something called middleware. Middleware is something that few people understand. I want you to read a little bit about what middleware is. Middleware is almost like a function that goes between other functions. And we have examples here of some middleware in our code. If you look here inside of our Visual Studio Code and I go to my app.ts, here is an example of middleware right in here. And the way it works is I make an app object by using Express. And then I say app.use. App.use, I'm using the logger module first. And you can see this as a sequence of connections. I connect my logger module. I connect my JSON module. I connect my URL encoded module. I connect my cookie parser module. And I'm doing that in sequence. Almost like I'm adding middleware functions in the middle. These are configuration changes that I made. And then I export my app. So this is configuration here. And if you look at that, if I go back to what it says here, it gives you some examples of how middleware works. Here's an incoming request. And then what I have is a bunch of middleware. Middleware, and then response. So it goes through this chain of middleware, which is what I'm getting your app to do right now, all right? That's what middleware means. If you've heard middleware before, you're like, I don't know what express middleware means. Who knows what that means? Tom just said middleware. Who cares, right? No, you need to understand what it means. And I've given you some examples of third-party middleware that is very popular. Body parser, cookie parser, Connect Flash, Cores, which is, cross-origin resource sharing, and a bunch of other ones that we're going to use, okay? As well as, what do these things mean? App.set, app.get, app.engine. What do those things mean? What does app.use do? Look what it says. This is used to create an express middleware to handle HTTP requests sent to the server. So app.use then, that's what this does. Whenever I take HTTP requests from the server, it goes through these processes. It goes through each one of these modules, right? And each of those modules does something to your code, to your request. It changes it, it checks it, it parses it, and it returns a clean response. Okay? Questions around this before we go for the day? This is your in-class exercise 2. Everything that we've done today, which is making our little Express app work. Okay? And converting it to Node. Next time we get together, which is not next week, but the week after, we're going to take it further and create our connection to MongoDB, right? And clean up our route so that it's just, it doesn't return HTTP, but actually returns JSON data. Okay? That's it for today, guys. I'm going to stop recording now. Thank you so much for sticking around. I know I went over time.
Thank you for this.